Now, Nigeria is facing a significant revenue gap. This is threatening its ability to meet its developmental goals, including an annual financing shortfall of over $10 billion for its Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. A key approach to addressing this issue is through tax reforms that target the wealthiest 1% who control a disproportionate share of national income and wealth. A recent Fair Tax Monitor report focuses on how taxing the rich can bridge inequality and redirect crucial resources toward national development, benefiting the broader population rather than a privileged minority, thereby advancing Nigeria's overall progress. Joining us on the news now to discuss this is a partner, Tax Regulatory and People Services KPMG in Nigeria, Aminat Jegede. Thank you so much, Aminat, for joining us.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me on the program.
And to you too, thank you so much. Now, Aminat, Nigeria is undoubtedly at a turning point in its history, with its aspirations for progress threatened by its revenue gap. Can you tell us how much of a problem that this is?
Okay, thank you for that stimulating question. So yes, when you consider Nigeria's growth aspirations in line with the revenue that is generated on a year-on-year basis, especially when you look at the budgets and you consider our expenditure and see the huge deficit that is proposed when the budget is being set, then the first thing that will come to your mind is absolutely there is some form of revenue problem. But when you juxtapose that and look at the expenditure leg, right, you would also have to ask the question, do we really have only a revenue problem, or we have both a revenue and expenditure problem? Some people have said, yes, as a country, we shouldn't just be looking at the revenue gap. We should also be looking at the quantum of our expenditure for the year, wherein we're able to also reduce some of the expenditure, both recurrent expenditure that we have, to ensure that we manage that deficit. But for the most part, when you look at the different sources of income that the country has, and you also put that together with some of our commitments to international organizations, then you can say that we have a revenue problem. But personally, I would say we should look at it as both revenue and expenditure problem.
So some have suggested the progressive wealth tax. Would you also recommend this? And if you would, tell us the reason.
Okay, so personally, I think it's even interesting to note that currently in Nigeria, we have a progressive tax system, because if you look at our personal income tax rates and you look at the graduated table, you will see that we have a system wherein the higher you earn, the more you pay in taxes. And, that is what we have in the current Personal Income Tax Act. But what people are proposing is that in addition to that, some recognized wealthy Nigerians should be taxed extra. I've seen that this is a tool that is used in different countries. I mean, at the last G20 was one of the proposals during the discussion that the wealthy billionaires should be paying an additional 2% as wealth tax. But when you bring it back to Nigeria, the question is, do we have an economy that will support such taxation, such additional taxation? Some of the tax reforms that you currently have been proposed by the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee already indicates that anyone that is earning above 50 million will be taxed at about 25%. So yes, that's something that the country is already considering, but most people are asking ourselves, can you really tax a people to prosperity? To say, shouldn't we be looking at other aspects of generating income? And case in point, there are some other African countries that, rather than increasing taxation at the moment, are actually looking for other opportunities to grow their economy. In some instances, a country like Ghana is proposing tax breaks and seeking to introduce more industries in his economy rather than, increasing tax, because like most people would say, you need to earn the income before you can actually pay the taxes associated with them. So how about we give a more conducive business environment that would enable people to earn more money, which will now generate additional taxes for the country.
So we might as well start by outlining the HNWI's classification and potential taxation. Who is eligible for this and what proportion are we looking at?
Okay, if you look at the report that is currently making the rounds, that was generated by the FIRS, that's the Federal Inland Revenue Service, and the Joint Tax Board, they have defined an high net worth individual as someone that earns 40 million and above, right? Now, the question is, in a country where at the moment the headline inflation and food inflation is hovering between 37 and almost 38%, would you really say someone that is earning 40 million is deemed to be a high net worth individual? If you look at countries where these wealth taxes have been proposed, and for the most part, these are still discussions that are yet to be finalized. It is still a proposal at their different regulatory and cabinets. So if you look at them, what they are proposing is to tax the billionaires. And if you bring that to monthly figures, we're looking at people that are earning in the realm of 100 million in a month. And, when you bring that to Nigeria, the report has indicated that anyone that is earning above 40 million and 40 million or anything above that is an high net worth. And the question we're asking ourselves is, with the current inflation rates, with the high energy cost and the other issues that are plaguing the country, would we really describe these people as high net worth, or should we be considering people who are wealthy in terms of who are the billionaires, which is something that other countries are considering? But again, before we even set or even finalize on that, we also need to take into consideration the fact that our economy is different from theirs. The countries that are seeking to introduce taxes of this nature are highly industrialized. They have a wild number of industries. They have enough factors that is enabling their economy to develop. Right now, we are struggling with some economic indices that needs to be addressed first before we can even start talking about, taxing people a bit more.
So the president, the chairman rather, of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, do you think that he has or he shares the same ideas, or does he have opposing ideas?
When I look at some of the reports that have made the round, and also by listening to the chairman of the committee, it appears that there is a consideration to actually impose additional taxes on the wealthy. And if you look at some of the tax reforms that's are being considered, one of them is increments in the value added tax rates. The other one is, like I mentioned earlier, an increase in the personal income tax rate for people that earn 50 million and above. And last week, there was actually a news that was making the round wherein there was a consideration for those that are earning about 100 million and above in a month to also be taxed at 25%. So yes, it appears that there is some form of alignment as to what the chairman is thinking, whether or not to tax the wealthy. But like I said earlier, we need to put all of these things in context. We need to look at the current status of our economy. We need to look at how to ensure that all the multiple taxes that businesses are complaining about are being addressed. And when all of that has been done, then we can now think of a complete overhaul, which is what the committee is proposing anyway. But, we need to kind of face it. We need to ensure that we are measuring the impact of the policies that are being introduced and see where we need to course correct before new ones would be added.
All right, Aminat Jegede, Partner Tax Regulatory People Services, KPMG Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts. And we're hoping to hear more from that angle about the tax reform. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.